Hi. Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook, and today we are talking through my top 10 reads of 2023. I know it's so annoying that everyone always has to say this at the beginning of this type of video, but I'm sorry, where did this year go? Am I clinically insane or did it just fly by? You know what, maybe I'm just getting old. Let's not go there. I don't know, but this year just went by so fast. I feel like it was just 2 weeks ago I was sitting down to talk about my top 10 books of 2022. I think this is the third year now that I've done this with you guys, which is just so crazy. It's so fun, and it's always just like so exciting to look back on these videos like through the years and just see all of my favorite reads. And it's always like the highlight of my year, honestly, to like look back at all of the books that I've read over the year and try to like pick a top 10, even though it is the hardest thing in the entire world every single year. But especially this year, I read so many good books, and I'm really excited to just talk through these with you guys. Of course, as always, you know, if you're a reader, so much of reading has to do with your mood, the vibes, like the setting, whatever it might be. So keep in mind, as I talk through these 10 books, I did the best I could to sort of rank them, but depending on the day, my mood, these could honestly switch around because they are all so good, but I tried my best to give it a definitive sort of ranking. Regardless, I'm excited. We've got a lot of different types of books. I mean, I have romance, I have dark romance, I have a thriller mixed in here. There's just a lot of things happening, and I'm really excited to talk about it, so let's just get into it. So first up, my number 10 read of 2023 was The Summer We Fell by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I have talked about this book so much this year. I mean, every single one of these books that I'm going to talk about, I've talked about a lot this year, but it's for a good reason. I love Elizabeth O'Rourke. This is really the year that I discovered her. I read a few books by her, and I want to read so many more. She just has such a like particular style to her writing, just such a good flow. Every single one of her books I just feel like hits every single mark that I want, every single trope that I love, and this book really was no different. I loved it so much. This is just a summary book through and through. It pretty much follows this girl that grew up in this really small town that had a really rough sort of upbringing and family life, and she ends up getting taken in by the family of the local pastor. So she meets his son at school, they kind of befriend one another. Over time they end up dating, and so she ends up moving in with his family in high school because she has to leave her home situation. And you know, she's very thankful for that family. They've really kind of saved her. She really does love her friend, who is now turned into her boyfriend, but yeah, she doesn't really know what her future holds. She has a lot of dreams. She wants to be a singer, but she just knows that that's probably not in the cards for her. And she's, you know, waiting tables in this small town. She knows she's going to end up like working for the church with this family that she's become a part of, and that's just going to be her life. That's what she's kind of accepted. But over time, her boyfriend, you know, grows older, as she does, and he ends up going off to college because he has a football scholarship. And whenever he goes to college, he ends up meeting this boy that is on his team that becomes his very good friend, and he also has a very rough home life. So he ends up coming home to stay with him for the summer and for kind of all the summers to come in college. And that is when the two of them meet, the girlfriend and the boyfriend's best friend. And it's funny, you know, there's a lot of kind of layers to this story, but truly it's just about two people that come from really similar backgrounds that really need each other in a lot of ways. The boyfriend's best friend really helps this girl to see like all of her potential and to remind her that her life is for her to live, and there's just so much to it. It's definitely a bit of like a scandalous story, a bit of a sort of, you know, love triangle. There's also a couple of different aspects to it because this story does flash between the present and the past, so you do know present day, obviously, like something happened here, something very dramatic happened, and the two of them are sort of reuniting present day, and it's all just coming out. I just was on the edge of my seat reading this book. There was just so much tension, so much buildup, so much will they or won't they. You just like fell in love with these characters, and you just like wanted to scream and just wanted them to be together, but it was just such a complicated situation. I loved it so much. I've honestly thought about it on like a weekly basis since I read it. I think it's definitely going to be a book that I'm going to read, you know, for summers to come. It's got those surfing vibes in it. The guy is a football player, but he's also a surfer. So it's just a really beautiful full picture, and I loved it so much. So up next for my number 9 is my new favorite thriller of all time. Honestly, I feel like this has just been the thriller of this past year. and it's for a good reason. It has all of those aspects of a just super suspenseful story that just keeps you turning the pages, keeps you up at night. I have read so many of these books I'm going to talk about basically in one sitting, but this was the book that like I could not put down. I think I stayed up until like 4:30 or 5 in the morning because I just knew I wasn't going to sleep until I finished it. It was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I still think about this book all the time. I've gifted this book to so many people. If anyone asks me for a thriller, it is my first recommendation because it is just on a whole other level. Basically, this story follows this woman that has just recently gotten out of prison, and she's very desperate for a job, desperate to get back on her feet. She's been living out of her car, and she ends up coming across this ad to work as a live-in housemaid, and the situation is just super ideal for her. It's for this very wealthy, you know, family that is very sort of well-known in this community. Obviously the job allows her to live with them. She needs a place to live. It is well paying. It's just like a perfect ideal situation. So long story short, she ends up interviewing for the position and getting it, and she quickly finds out as soon as she starts it that this picture perfect wealthy family that she thinks she's working for isn't quite so picture perfect as soon as she actually gets close to them. Every member of the family just like has weird and creepy sort of aspects to them, but the wife, especially when she interviews with her, she just seems so nice, so sweet, so excited that she's going to be here. But as soon as she starts working for her, it's just not quite right. I say it every time I talk about this book, but I have just never felt so gaslit in my entire life as I did reading this book. There are so many things that you read, so many things that, you know, the woman in the story is told. You think something is one way and then it flips around and it's actually another way. It's like, no, I never told you this. No, this is how this is supposed to be. No, this didn't happen. And you're like, wait, I swear that did happen. Like, it has you flipping back pages wondering like if you read something wrong. There's just so much to it, and it's one of those books that has like multiple plot twists, so you think that it's like going one way or it's about one certain thing, and then it flips and it goes another way, and then like right when you think you're getting comfortable again, it's like, nope, actually it's this. My jaw was simply on the floor. I was so stressed out. I feel like I was like white knuckling this book, like getting through it, because I was just like, oh my god, I have to know what happens. And it is just so good in the end. It is nowhere near where I thought it was going, and I just absolutely loved it. So if you're looking to get into your thriller era in this next year, I definitely recommend starting with this one, or honestly any book by Frida McFadden. She is just incredible. Up next at number 8 is a book that is just so near and dear to my heart. It's one that I put off reading for a long time because I just knew it was gonna do things to me. I knew it was gonna kind of like alter my brain chemistry in a way, and I was definitely right. It is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a very sort of like polarizing book. You either absolutely love it or you just don't like it at all, and I kind of love books like that. I feel like when you're on the side where you love it, you really love it, and that is definitely how I feel. Like, I will fight to the death for this book. Sally Rooney just has a very particular sort of style to her books. I've gone on to read, you know, more by her since then, and she just has this way with words. Her stories are romance books, but not really. They're about like relationships, but they're really just like literary fiction at the end of the day. They just feel so raw and real. It's like you're living with these characters as these characters going through their life, and there's no like butterflies and rainbows. There's no like beautiful tied up happy ending. Like, it is just a very true story about very realistic, relatable sort of people, and these characters just mean the world to me. This story essentially is just about this girl named Marianne and this boy named Connell, and it follows their relationship from high school on to college over the course of like 8 years or so, and you just see them grow sort of together, grow closer together, grow apart. Their relationship is sort of on again, off again. They're two very different people that just are like each other's soulmates in so many ways. Marianne in high school is a very quiet, sort of nerdy girl that doesn't really have any friends, and Connell is very popular. He's an athlete, and Connell's mother actually works for Marianne's family. Marianne's family is very wealthy. Even though she is kind of like this nerd at school, she has this very wealthy family, and Connell is very popular at school, but he comes from a very poor, sort of, you know, looked down upon family in this town. And so they end up befriending one another because Connell's mom works for Marianne's family, and he has to go and pick up his mother from work. And even though they don't talk at school at all, they start kind of talking on those days that Connell is picking up his mother, and, you know, grow closer over time, become friends, become something more. But Connell is so concerned with how people like view him and what they think of him, and so he doesn't want people to really know he's with Marianne, and Marianne wants nothing more than, you know, for people to know that she's with Connell, not you know, for the popularity of it, but just because she's proud to be with him. Like, there's just so much to it. You kind of see just the way it is growing up, how people grow, and how, you know, you might be some way in high school and some people peak in high school, but then you go off to college and you can become an entirely different person. And that is what we see in this story. Connell and Marianne actually end up going to the same university, and Marianne totally blossoms there, where Connell kind of has issues like adapting to university life. And you just see the two of them, you know, just how they change over time but also stay the same. And there's just so much to it. This really isn't a story with much of a plot. It's a very like character driven story, and it's just following the two of them and their, you know, issues in their personal lives together and apart, and just all the things that they go through. And I just loved every second of it. There are so many beautiful quotes in this story and so many moments with these characters that I just related to on such a deep, like, personal level. It's just a story about like growing up, growing older, and just life and relationships and right person, wrong time, just all of those things that kind of give you like the warm and fuzzies and also like make your heart ache a little bit. I just adored this book. The show on Hulu is freaking incredible. It's like one of the best adaptations I've ever seen of a book ever. I could talk about it for hours to come, but honestly, I just think you should read it. So up next, my number 7 is A Song of Sin and Salvation by L.H. Blake. And I am just so happy that I came across this book and across this author this year, because I just adore her and we've become very good friends. Funny story, the cover designer for this book is actually the cover designer for a couple of my books, Ink and Laurel, Sam Palencia, literally queen of my heart. She designed my cover for my 80s romance called Something Rad, and you might be able to tell by the look of this cover, this is also an 80s romance. So as soon as I saw it, as soon as I saw that Sam designed this cover, I was like, we need to be friends. And that is exactly what happened. I ended up going into this book not with a ton of expectations. Like, I knew like, oh, it's an 80s romance, I'm sure I'm gonna like it. Like, I was excited to give it a try, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. It became one of my favorite books of the year, just one of my favorite sort of rom-coms of all time. And I don't even know if you can call this a rom-com. Like, it has the rom-com sort of look to it, but it's such a deep, beautiful story. You know, you guys might know my book, Something Rad. If you're a fan of Steve Harrington, this is the book for you. My muse was Steve Harrington when I wrote this male main character, and you might be able to tell from the cover, the muse of this story is very much Eddie Munson from Stranger Things. If you were one of those people that was just so upset that we never got to see Eddie and Chrissy's love story play out on screen, this is the book for you, because it's not a fan fiction in any sort of way like that, but if you sort of can visualize them as the characters and like imagine that this is their story, it will just fill every single void in your heart that you had for that. It is just so beautiful. It is a story obviously set in the 80s, and it follows this girl named Rebecca that has just grown up in this very religious family. She has all of these expectations on her. She's, you know, basically been arranged to marry this boy in this small town. She's always known that's gonna be her life. She's just gonna marry him straight out of high school, have kids, they're just gonna live their little life, and that's all she's really ever known and all she's expected to do. But next door, this boy ends up moving in that is pretty much everything she's ever been told to stay far away from. He has long hair, he's, you know, a guitar player, he listens to this like rock and roll music, he has these posters on his walls, he wears this, you know, jewelry. Like, he's just like the opposite of what her parents would want for her, and basically they want her to stay like as far away from him as possible. But the two of them end up befriending each other, because they literally, their bedroom windows are right next to each other. They can see each other through their windows. It's kind of a cute little like Taylor Swift, You Belong With Me kind of moment, but in a little bit less wholesome way. Anyways, the two just cross paths over time, sort of like become friends, much against Rebecca's better judgment, and it eventually becomes something more. This is really a story that deals a lot with like religious trauma. It's so beautifully done in that way, and James is just like everything that Rebecca needs. Like, he really just like opens her eyes to like, again, just this idea that like your life is yours to live. Like, stop living it for other people. Like, you can be happy, you shouldn't feel guilty for feeling the things you feel. Like, there's just so much to it, and it's so well done. It is 80s through and through. It just like is what my soul is made of. The playlist in this book is just so good. If you're a fan of Stranger Things, if you're a fan of the 80s, if you're a fan of literally any of that, an enemies to lovers story, it doesn't even matter. You're gonna love this book. I adore it, and I think every single person should read it. we've got a special guest here to introduce our number 6 read of 2023, and I just have to tell you guys, I really got to a point this year where I thought rom-com books were just not for me anymore. I just read so many in a row that just like didn't do it for me. They were just so like light and fluffy and just didn't feel like they had much depth to them. I was just like, I don't know if this is the type of book for me anymore. I think I'm just gonna stop buying them. I just was disappointed so many times, but then I read this book and it just like reignited my love for rom-coms and just this author in general. I'm just in love with her. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I made a reading vlog reading this book, not expecting to love it. You know, it looked cute to me. I had heard so many people talk about it. I've had so many people just recommend it to me in my DMs, and my comments are like, you have to read Better Than the Movies, you're gonna love it. And I was like, I don't know, like it's set in high school, it's like a YA romance. I don't know if it's gonna be my thing, but I absolutely devoured this book. If you are a fan of rom-com movies or just rom-coms in general, like this is for you. This is a rom-com about rom-coms. It is about this girl that grew up with her mother watching rom-com movies like every single night, just falling in love with love and just like being such a hopeless romantic and having this vision for the future and just constantly wanting to live her life as the main character, and she just wanted that perfect love story, and she just has like stars in her eyes, like it is just what she wants and she believes it so through and through. And she basically has grown up living next door to this boy that she's always just butt heads with. Like they have never gotten along, and now they are in high school, and their latest sort of battle is they always fight for this one parking spot on their street. They both try to park in it, and it is a fight every single day, and she just really can't stand him. But now she really needs his help because they are in their senior year of high school. It's about to be prom time, and this boy that used to live on their street has moved back to town, and she was in love with this boy growing up. She was just like enamored by him, had the biggest crush on him, and now he is here, he is all grown up, and she's like, that is the boy that is gonna bring me to prom. We're like, this is perfectly like our meet cute moment, this is our love story, like I want to get with him. But she doesn't really have a way to talk to him. She's having trouble sort of getting closer to him, but it turns out he was best friends growing up with her next door neighbor that she cannot stand, and now they have picked up their friendship right away. So she's like, okay, here's the deal, if you help me get to him, you can have the parking spot we've been fighting over. So it sort of turns into a bit of like a fake dating story for her to like try to get this boy jealous, to try to like get him to take her to prom, and you kind of know what happens in those fake dating sort of stories. This book just gave me all of the butterflies, all of the rainbows. Like it was just so freaking cute. I was like kicking my feet and giggling, having that like first love, first crush sort of feeling all over again. Like I felt like I was in like junior high, high school. Like I had a crush on a boy again, and like I wanted to go to school and like see him, and it was just like all the little things you think about, like, you know, the text that he's sending and like the way he looked at you. Like, oh my god, it just gave me the warm and fuzzies. And like the ending of this book, every bit of it, it was just perfect. It was like the most perfect rom-com movie you've ever seen, just like put into a book and just wrapped up in the most beautiful bow. I just loved it. I truly am getting into my Lynn Painter era after reading this book. At the very end of the year, I ended up reading 2 more books by her that I also loved. Like I just want to read Lynn Painter's entire backlog over the next year because like she's doing something right, and I just love her, and this book is just everything. So we're now at my number 5 book of 2023, and we just talked about Better Than the Movies and how that book gave me that first love sort of feeling, and it really did in like this fluffy, beautiful, like warm and cozy sort of way. But this book did it in a way that like brought tears to my eyes. It was just so like impactful. It was so deep. It like made my heart ache in the best possible way. It is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This book just has like every trope that just sets my heart on fire, just everything that I love. If you guys have been watching me for a while, like you will know, I love a story that has a past and a present timeline, that is dual point of view, that, you know, shows these two characters, like present day, clearly have been through a lot, and they are now reuniting. They've now found each other again after so many years apart, and then you're flashing back to the past and you're seeing when they originally met, you're seeing their sort of love story, everything that happened between them. You're sort of putting the pieces together of what happened, like what could have possibly driven these two people apart after we see them like fall in love in such an intense way. And this story just did it so well. I was just so like nostalgic. Right when I read it, I just knew it was gonna be one of those books that was gonna live on my shelf for a very, very long time. And I can truly say after finishing it, because it's been so many months and I'm still thinking about it, that is definitely the case. Basically, the story starts out from the point of view of this man that lives in New York City. He is going about his daily life. You can tell he's kind of been through it the past few years. Like, he's just kind of in this state where he's like not very happy. He's kind of wondered what's happened to his life, and he basically goes to get on the subway and he sees this sort of like flash out of his peripheral vision, and he turns around. He's like, there's absolutely no way, but there is. He sees this girl, and right away you can tell like these two have history. Something happened between the two of them. He calls out her name. She turns around as she's getting on her train. The doors close and she is whisked away. And that is kind of where we are then taken back to the past, where we see the two of them meet for the first time. They actually went to college together in New York. They lived in the same dorm right next door to each other. And you see the two of them form this just like immediate sort of bond and friendship. There is this spark between the two of them, this chemistry like I have not read in a lot of books. It just really like drew me in right away. He's a photographer. She plays, I think, the cello, and they are just like very artsy, and they just like love what they do, and they both like have a lot of things going on in their personal lives, and they're both kind of like, they clearly like each other, but they're like kind of forcing each other to stay apart. It's like, no, we can't go there, but obviously it ends up going there after a long time. And like seeing these two like kind of transform from friends to lovers is the most beautiful thing. Like, this gave me so many butterflies in my tummy. Like, I just felt like I was in college all over again, and I was just again like experiencing that like first love sort of feeling. And you just see this like epic love story between them, and you end up kind of seeing what drives the two of them apart and what makes them be apart for all these years. And then obviously now you see them reuniting again, and like when you learn everything that happened between the two of them, it is just so good. It was just like one of these books that you just want to like hug to your chest and keep forever. You might see the cover says a love, hate, love story, and that is definitely what this ends up being. It's just so good. I've recommended this book to so many people, and I definitely need to read more by Renee Carlino because she is just something special. So up next at number 4, I have to put a book, and really it's a whole series that is again very polarizing, but I have not stopped thinking about it since the moment I read it. I devoured this book series. It is not like me to binge a series, honestly. I usually have to take a decent break between books. I like to kind of sit with them for a while, whether it's a week or a month. Like, I usually take my time to read a series. It is not like me to just fly through it. But this is a 5-book series. Each book is like 500 pages, and I binged the entire thing in a week and a half. Like, I have never been so like ravenous to finish a series, and honestly, like, it's kind of made to be binged because every single book ends on such a cliffhanger. Like, it is one continuous story, and you just have to keep going or you feel like you're gonna go insane. And that is pretty much what happened to me. I went insane anyways because I have not stopped thinking about this series. It is the Off Balance series by Lucia Franco, and I'm just gonna tell you right off the bat, this is not gonna be for everyone. This is a very taboo, scandalous type of book. Every type of scandal that you can imagine takes place in this book. It is pretty much a story of this girl that wants to go to the Olympics. She's a gymnast, and she is dead set on her goal of going to the Olympics, and she needs a better coach. She knows like it's now or never. She's getting, you know, older to the age where if it doesn't happen now, it's not gonna happen. So she ends up convincing her father to send her to this very elite gymnastics school in another state. Her father actually is friends with the coach that runs the school. He is this Russian man, this former Olympian. He is just like known to be the best of the best. And so she is sent to this school. She is living there on her own, and she is training with this man, and right off the bat, he lets it be known that like he is not gonna go soft on her. He doesn't even want to train her initially when they meet. They have a horrible first interaction. He's like, you're not good enough. It's not happening. You're too old. Like, I'm not impressed. Like, I only have so much time, and you are not worth that time, clearly. And she is intent on making it known that like she will do everything she has to do to make it to the Olympics, and she wants to be trained by him. And so it ends up happening. He becomes her coach, and yeah, a lot of things ensue with this story. There's so much tension within it. The most palpable tension I have ever read. I have never read a more suspenseful romance book where like I was on the edge of my seat, like foaming at the mouth, like kicking my feet, like toes curling, like for the love of God, something happened here or I'm gonna explode. Like that was this book. As you might be able to tell, like this is a taboo story of a relationship between this girl and her coach. And so, I mean, like I said, everything scandalous that could possibly go on in the story goes on. It is a major age gap. He is her father's best friend. He is in a relationship. He is her coach. It's like a workplace sort of scenario, a power dynamic, like just everything that could be wrong is wrong. But it just felt so right. Like I said, it's not gonna be for everyone. If you're not a dark romance person, if you're not a taboo romance person, just don't even try. Don't even bother. Like this book has horrific reviews because, you know, if you go into it thinking it's gonna be some like wholesome, sweet little romance, it's not that. Like it's gonna be your thing or it's not gonna be your thing. And I'm proud to say it was my thing. This is seriously the best dark taboo romance I've ever read. The best spice I've ever read in my life. Like there's simply nothing that compares. And you guys know, I've read a lot. I've read a lot of it. The spice that Lucia Franco writes in this book, like there are scenes from this that are embedded in my memory that I simply will never be able to shake. And I don't want to shake them, but like they're here forever. And if you are looking for, if you feel like you've read all the spicy, dark sort of romance that there is to read, and like this isn't that dark, it's just like taboo, but man, it's a little dark. I don't know. If you feel like you've read it all and like nothing is making you feel anything anymore, because that's the point I was at when I read this book. I was like, I've read a lot of like, you know, Penelope Douglas, whatever. Like I've read a lot of stuff like that. I just feel like nothing shocks me anymore. Nothing really catches me off guard. This will do that for you. I promise you. I simply have not stopped thinking about it since I read it. Like I think about it all the time. I honestly think I'm gonna have to reread it this year because I just can't get it out of my head. And yeah, I don't know if I can say any more about it. If you're a dark romance girly, if you're a taboo romance girly, if you're a spicy girly, you simply must read this in 2024. I don't know what to tell you. Okay guys, we are officially in my top 3, and look, I already said it. It's so hard to rank these books. I love all of them so much, but especially as we get in this top 3, it's damn near impossible. Like depending on the day, any of these could interchange. Like simply these top 3 books were life-changing. Like I just adore them with everything in me. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it. But for my number 3, I want to talk about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I truly cannot explain how much I love this book, how much it really just like rocked my world, blew my mind, just made me sit there and think. I got a damn tattoo for it because it just meant that much to me and really just like messed with my mind. A book that can like make me really sit back and think about life and like gain a new appreciation for it, make me just like realize like, why am I here? What am I doing? Anything like that is going to be a favorite of mine, and this one just absolutely did that for me. It basically follows this girl named Addie LaRue, as you might be able to tell. She was born in the 1700s in this small town in France, and growing up, she just always felt like there was something more for her. Like she wanted to see the world and like live her own life. She didn't want to just be like shackled by these expectations that, you know, she has from her parents, and just what is the norm of this time of you grow up, you're arranged to marry someone, you marry someone, you have kids, like that is it. Like she never wanted that for herself. So when that time inevitably comes that she's having to marry this man that she doesn't even know and especially doesn't love, she is just desperate. She runs out of her wedding and she cries out for help. And she was always told growing up, like, never pray to the gods that answer in the night or something like that. I butchered that a little bit, but it is nighttime because it is the night of her wedding, and she just cries out. She wants help. She is desperate, and this, you know, angel, demon, whatever you want to call him, sort of figure appears to her. This very handsome sort of dark figure, and he's like, what do you want? What can I help you with? Like what do you need from me? And the only thing that she can think to say in the moment is time. Like she just wants more time. She just feels her life slipping away. She feels like it's going too fast. Like there's so many things she wants to do, so many things she wants to see, and she just wants more time to do that. And so he's like, okay, I mean, I can give you all the time in the world. The only thing that I need in return is whenever, you know, you're done, when you don't want to live anymore, when you're seeing all the things you need to see, I get to have your soul. And Addie is immediately like, okay, that's a great deal, because why would I ever be done? Like, I will just live forever. He's never gonna get my soul. Perfect, works for me. So she takes the deal, and you might guess that this man, this figure, this demon, this angel, whatever, is a little sneaky. There was a reason she was always told to never pray to the gods that answer in the night, because even though he blesses her with immortality, he curses her with never being able to be remembered, essentially. She gets to live forever. She gets to, you know, walk this planet as long as she wants, but nobody will ever know her. She'll never be able to form any type of relationship. Anytime someone sees her, as soon as they turn away and look back at her again, they will not remember her. If they fall asleep, they wake up, they will have no memory of spending time with her. She cannot tell anyone her name. She cannot write anything down. She cannot create anything. She can't leave anything behind. If anyone takes a picture of her, it's blurry. She is literally cursed with this like lonely existence. Like, she can live each day like meeting people, spending the day with them, you know, whatever, but the next day she will not be remembered, and she can't create anything. It's just such a like interesting concept, this idea of like, you have all the time in the world, but like, what does it really mean if you don't get to spend it with anybody, and you don't get to share it with anybody, you don't get to leave anything behind? Like, it's just so interesting. There's so many like aspects to it and layers to it as you go and continue, and it's just like, oh my God, it just blew my mind. And you pretty much see Addie for like 100 years sort of struggle with this and like learn how to live her life, because she's like not about to give up. She's not gonna give this man her soul. Like, every single year on the anniversary of them making this deal, he comes at her and he's like, are you ready to give up? And she's like, no, I'm not gonna give up. Like, she finds a way to live her life. She goes and sees all these things she wants to see, but you know, 100 years has gone by and she has not had a single friend. And finally now, present day, she's living in New York City. She goes into this bookstore and returns to it the next day, and this man that works in the bookstore says, I remember you. And that's kind of the whole like concept behind the story. Someone for the first time in 100 years remembers her. And so that is really kind of where it picks up, and there's so much to it. Like I said, this book was just like, it was very like fantasy, but so much more to it than that. It felt so real, so raw. I just adored this story. And again, it just is one of those ones that reminds you, because if you're like me, you relate a lot to Addie. You might have those feelings of like, oh, I just feel like time is slipping away, like the clock is ticking, like I'm running out of time. But it's one of those stories that just reminds you, like, it's not about having all the time in the world. It's like about how you spend the time and like what you do with it and the relationships you form and all of that. I could go on and on. I just adored this book, as you might be able to tell. And it stuck with me all year, and I think it's gonna stick with me pretty much forever. So yeah, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, so good. I'm just gonna say it one more time as we get into these top two books. It is impossible for me to truly pick a favorite, but just for the sake of talking about this, for the sake of the flow, for how I'm gonna talk about it, it makes sense for me to put this book as my number 2. Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. This is the 4th book in the Magnolia Parks universe. You guys know at this point, if you watch me, the Magnolia Parks universe is my favorite book series of all time. Like, I just can't say any more about it. Jessa Hastings as an author, I discovered her, I guess, 2 years ago now when I first started reading this series, and I will never forget the first time I started reading Magnolia Parks, the way that I felt, the way that it was like nothing I had ever read before. Jessa Hastings just has such a way of writing, of forming a story, of just like the internal monologue that she gives these characters, the way that she says things. It's like so simple yet so complex. It is so poetic. It just like, oh my God, it just like makes you feel all of the feelings that there are to feel. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I always say, I'm a broken record, that she is an artist and this series is her masterpiece, and I will say it until I'm blue in the face. And it just continues to blow my mind because I've loved each book in the series more and more, and this is the 4th book in the series, and it is my favorite so far. If you don't know anything about Magnolia Parks, it is very sort of similar. Everyone says this and it's like, it feels like such a simple way to put it, but it's kind of like Gossip Girl if it was set in the high society in London and was about like adults, you know, in their mid-20s. It's, you know, follows this friend group that grew up together going to this very elite sort of boarding school, and now they are adults and socialites, and it really follows these two girls, Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. They are both from this very like you know, high society sort of world, but from two very different parts of it. Magnolia is very just like rich and posh, and her father's like a music producer, and Daisy Hates comes from this really elite crime family. They steal like high-end art from these museums, and they run in the same social circle, but it's very, very different. And so the story is sort of formatted where you get the Magnolia Parks story and then the Daisy Hates story, and the Magnolia Parks and the Daisy Hates story, but it's like all the same timeline, but you see sort of like the same scenes multiple times from all these different characters' points of views, but then there's also other scenes that you see happen, and it's just like the most like intricate puzzle being sort of created and wound together, and it's just like I cannot say enough things about it. I love the Magnolia Parks books so much, but something about the Daisy Hates books just really, really get to me. There's a character in this story, Daisy's brother, Julian, that is just like my favorite male main character, like maybe ever. I can't get enough of him. I can't get enough of this series, and it would just be wrong to not include. I'm always like iffy about including sequels in like a top 10, you know, books of the year, but I just was sitting here making this list and I'm like, I can't not talk about this. Like I can't ever not talk about Magnolia Parks. Like it's not gonna happen. So yeah, I said it so many times, but if you have not read the Magnolia Parks universe, like there is not a series in the world that I recommend more than this one, because it's the best. It's the best. I don't know how else to explain it. So guys, for my #1 read of 2023, it's so funny because it seems to never fail. I always end up reading one of my favorite books of the year in the last week of the year. Like during the Christmas holiday, I'm always reading so many books, and there's always one that just hits. It always ends up in my top 10. But this was the absolute last book that I read in 2023. I read it up until the final day. Literally, I think I finished it at like 11:30 p.m. on December 31st. And it was my favorite read of the year. I just know that this book series is going to define my 2024. I can just feel it. I can feel the obsession starting to take over. I have not stopped thinking about it since the moment I finished it, and I am just so ready to dive in. But it was Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the Boys of Tommen series. This was another one that I had a feeling about. I have a very good friend named Ashley that is just obsessed with this series. She likes all the same things I do, and she's been telling me, she actually sent me this book last Christmas, and she was like, this is my favorite read of the year. I just know you're gonna love it. I put off reading it for a year because I only have so much brain capacity. I only have so much, you know, room in my head to obsess over things, or so I think, because I just continue to add more and more to the pile. But oh my God, she was not wrong. And I'm gonna put down one of these because this is a thick book. It is a heavy book, but it is worth every single page, every single ounce, because I love it. The reason I want to talk about this one last is because if you are a fan of the Magnolia Parks series, if you like that style of book where it has the multiple points of view, where it follows like this big sort of friend group, and there's all these different people and all these different kind of stories going on, and these scenes that you see from one point of view, but then you see them for another, and you kind of see it all come together, and it just, you know, it has all of these characters that just feel like a found family sort of situation that you just fall in love with. It feels so real. It feels like you are in the friend group. You are a part of it. Like it is like you are reading your own life story in a way, like you were just there for all of it. You will love this series. Like the best way I can kind of think to describe it, to compare it to anything else, is kind of like Magnolia Parks meets the best parts of El Kennedy. Like I know that's random, but it's sort of a sports romance. This, you know, entire series, the Boys of Tommen series, follows these boys that are rugby players at this private school in Ireland. So it is Tommen College, I think. Tommen College, yeah. So it follows these boys that are rugby players, and so that's what the numbers are for, like all the books, the Binding 13, Keeping 13, Saving 6. The next book is called like 7. They all have numbers because it refers to the boys' numbers, like on their jerseys or whatever. But this book in particular, the first book, follows this boy Johnny and this girl named Shannon, and Johnny is like the star rugby player at Tommen College. Like he is set to play for Ireland. Like he is known by everyone in the country, and he's just like an absolute star. Rugby is his entire life. It is his everything, and he has really put everything into this sport, and he's recently gotten this injury that has really affected him. He's had to have surgery for it, and he needed to wait and let it heal, but he's been fighting it because he's really afraid if he doesn't take the time to play, if he doesn't take time to train, like he's not going to make the team, he's not going to get to move on and like achieve his dream. It is like this gentle balance of like taking time off and letting it heal, but then possibly missing out on your chance. So you have him sort of battling that on one side, and then you have Shannon, and Shannon is this girl that you just want to like wrap up in a hug. She's really been through it. She has a really, really tough doesn't even like start to cover it, home life. She has a father that is very, very abusive. He's a drunk, and her mother really has not been able to be a good mother figure for their family. She is constantly the person that has to work, so she is home with her many siblings with this drunken father, and Shannon has just been through it all of her life. She's been heavily bullied at all of her, you know, during all of her school years growing up, and it just got to a point where she had to be pulled out of her school. Like, she was being horrifically bullied, and she has this older brother that has really I just know he's gonna be a character I'm gonna fall in love with so much. Like, I just have a feeling he's gonna end up being my favorite character in the series, but he has looked out for her forever when it comes to her father, when it comes to the bullies at school, and it got to a point where he was getting in trouble because he was like literally fighting for her. So she had to be pulled out, and she's being sent to this private school to Tommen College because her mother is like, you're gonna end up like seriously hurt if I leave you in this school. And so now she's working even more hours to put her through this school. So anyways, long story short, Shannon is starting her journey at Tommen College, and her and Johnny end up having this not so meet cute kind of moment in the first day of her school. And it kind of is just the story of them from there. Shannon is very like sheltered, I guess. Like, she's not allowed to do anything. She's not allowed to have a social life. She's really has to like care for her family, her younger siblings. Her father doesn't let her have any sort of life whatsoever, especially not one that involves boys. So when she meets Johnny and has feelings for him, it's a very complicated situation because she, you know, is fearful for herself and knows that it really can't be anything more. And that's kind of what she's dealing with. But Johnny is like been so laser focused on rugby his entire life, and he's like one step away from, you know, getting there. As soon as he finishes school, like, he's gonna go off and he's going to join the team and he's going to, you know, play for Ireland. But now this girl is in his life, and she's like distracting him, and he's insistent on not letting himself feel things for her, but he also cannot stop thinking about her. And so it's really just like a story of like their sort of relationship, and it's a long book, and their book is actually, or their story is actually a two-part story. There's a second book to this that I have not read yet, so I will talk a lot more about this. I'm planning on making an entire video surrounding these first two books in this series, like surrounding Johnny and Shannon's story. So if you've read Binding 13, if you want to know my thoughts, whatever, just keep a lookout for that, because that'll be coming very soon in the new year. I am immediately jumping into Keeping 13 after finishing this, but I just fell in love with this book and this story and like just this series already. I just know I'm gonna be so obsessed with it. The characters in this book felt so real, like the friend group. This is a book with so much like dialogue, but like in a good way. Like, the dialogue is so good. Like, you're just like flying through it, and you feel like it's just, you're watching like your friends like banter back and forth with each other, and it just, I don't know, it felt so real. Like, I didn't want to put it down. I was just feeling all the feelings. It's such a slow burn, like the most slow burn of slow burns I think I've ever read, but I absolutely ate it up. I just loved it. And this book is so floppy. I'm sorry, this is unrelated, but like, this is the floppiest book I own, and I'm here for it. But yeah, I am in my Boys of Tommen era, and 2024, just be prepared to be sick of me. Between the next Magnolia Parks book coming out in February and me reading this entire series, I'm just gonna be insufferable. So I hope you guys are here for it. Those are my top 10 books of 2023. It should go without saying, guys, that I am so thankful for you, that you really made my year just like you make my every year. I love getting, you know, to be able to come on here and talk to you guys about books. For any of you that, you know, DM'd me this year, followed me, talked to me about books, left a sweet comment, anything whatsoever. If you read my books this year, I just want to thank you so much. I'm starting to see wrap-ups coming out. I'm starting to see people mentioning, you know, reading my books or my books being like in their favorites of this year, and it just continues to blow my mind. I actually have my 3rd book, Between the Blue, is coming out in just a few days, January 10th. So 2024 is going to be a very, very exciting year, and as always, I am so excited to spend it with you guys. So thank you so much. If you read any of these books, I'd love to hear all your thoughts down below. If you had any favorite reads of 2023 that you would love for me to read in 2024, I just feel like it's something that I would really like. I would love to hear your suggestions down below. But yeah, guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you very soon. Here's to a beautiful 2024. Thanks.